Our featured guests tonight are arguably country music's most successful awarded duo, having been responsible for at least 20 #1 hits and countless more gold and platinum albums, including their mega hit Let Your Love Flow, which BMI includes on its short list of the 100 most played songs of the 20th century. Here to chat about their lives and incredible careers is none other than the Bellamy Brothers. David and Howard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thanks. Good to be here.
So I know you guys grew up in a musical household, but I was kind of curious as to what kind of music was played in your home growing up and what their tastes were and how that might have influenced each of you in your formative years.
I think we mostly growing up, we heard a variety of things, but we sang gospel music down at the church, and then our dad played honky-tonk music, with his friends while they were drinking moonshine, and that's pretty much the mixture we had. And our sister, we had a teenage sister who brought home rock and roll. She'd bring home records by Elvis and Ricky Nelson and stuff like that, and so we got a little bit of mixture of everything, but I think it started with gospel,
So how early did the music bug hit each of you, and which one did it hit first?
Well, our dad was musical, and he always had his buddies over, playing music. They played what they would call a frolic, for square dances and that sort of things in a band. And so we saw all of this, and we sang in church at a very young age. So we were exposed so many different ways, as David said. But I think we both always had the bug of just playing music for the fun of it. I personally had no idea to be making a living at it, and for the rest of our lives, I didn't realize that, but always loved it, and still have the passion for it.
Yeah, I don't think we ever remember there not being music in our family, from the time we were born, really.
How early did you guys realize that music as a career was an option for you, or something that you guys both wanted to pursue?
Well, I still don't think we realized that yet, but no, we played all kind of things. We had a band that played sort of country and top 40 and R&B and, as much different stuff as we could play so we could get hired different places. And I think it's when we started, trying to write songs, come up with songs, I wrote a song for Jim Stafford called Spiders and Snakes that sold about 3 million records. And once that happened, we said, oh, well, you can make a living at this if you can get hook the hit. So yeah, it was justified with our dad. He used to go get the mail. He'd always pick our mail. We lived rurally. He'd go to the mailbox, and first time he came back with the big check from, he said, well, I guess you boys made the right decision.
I was going to ask you if your family ever worried about your prospects or if they tried to nudge you in a different direction, but it seems like once checks started coming in, that would have bolstered the support.
Well, our dad would say, he'd say, oh, music, because he was a musician, basically. He would say, music's great, but you ought to have something to fall back on,
But he'd been in the war, our dad. They sent a Florida boy. Our dad sent him to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska during the war, of all places to send him. And when he came back, I think he loved to play music because he wanted to get as far away as the negatives as he could. I think he always understood why we loved it. And
how early did you both realize that operating as a duo was a real possibility? And I ask because with a lot of siblings, they love each other, but can never really work together. At what point did you guys go, hey, we should do this as a duo?
Well, we always sang together. Actually, our family, me and Howard, our dad and our sister all played music together. And so we were always singing together. Plus we had other things. I had a kind of a commercial rock band, and Howard had a FFA quartet, like a gospel quartet, barber shop. And so we had other things that we did. And I played accordion, and just, different things. But I don't think it was, we had a band called Jericho, and that Howard and I played together in. And I think that's probably where we developed more of our sound, like the Bellamy Brothers sound, because it was us and three other guys. And, of course, we were singing mostly cover hits, but I think that developed a lot of the harmony and stuff that we did.
Now, you mentioned, it's my understanding one of Jim Stafford's friends may have happened to hear you guys, and that kind of put that friend, put him onto you guys. Is that kind of what happened? And if so, what's the story there?
Well, no, actually what happened is Jim actually found the tape I left in the producer's office of Spiders and Snakes. But the story you're talking about, I think, is the one where one of the guys from the office heard Howard doing the sound check for Jim. He was sound checking for Jim and heard him singing. He said, and we had just cut "Let Your Love Flow," and he said, well, that's the voice that should sing "Let Your Love Flow." And so that's kind of technically when we actually became the Bellamy Brothers, sort of legally. You know what I mean? We became like an entity. But we had always sang together. We just didn't call ourselves the Bellamy Brothers at that point.
So that song allows you to, basically, I mean, I'm presuming here, allowed you guys the money to kind of make a move. What led you to LA and not somewhere like Nashville?
Well, for one thing, Jim and his producer and those guys were all working on a television show in LA at the time. And Howard started road managing for Jim, and I started writing some music for his TV show as well as his second album that was coming out. So we ended up basically going from a dirt farm in Florida to the middle of Hollywood. And so, at that time too, Nashville wasn't as sort of hippie friendly,
say the least,
as it is now. It's before the hippies took over the industry in Nashville, but we were in a weird crack, because we kind of did pop and country, and we grew up singing all that stuff. We did gospel, we did everything.
But we got to meet Neil Diamond's band early on when we moved to LA, which was one of the best things that ever happened for us. And we hung out, smoked a lot of pot together, and Dennis St. John, his drummer, came over with the song "Let Your Love Flow" and said, "Hey." It was written by Neil's roadie, actually. He said, "Hey, you guys, this sounds like something you could do." And when we heard it, it was like, "Oh, this is a great song." Especially for the times, it was just the perfect song. And shortly after that, we went in and recorded it. And it was like,
yeah, and I understood that there was getting this song involved some weird quirks of fate. And you had mentioned that Neil Diamond's roadie, it was Larry Williams, right? I think, who wrote it, and then somehow you end up with it instead of Neil. I mean,
Neil
actually there.
Well, Neil actually passed on the song. Johnny Rivers passed on it.
Wow, Johnny Rivers passed on it. Yeah. I did not know that.
Because we a couple of years later, we were eating breakfast with Johnny Rivers, and he's going, "Man, I sure wish I had passed on that record." But yeah, he passed and Neil passed both. But I mean, Neil had that time done most of his own, had written most of his own stuff. So I don't know what the story was there, but I know that Larry worked for Neil for years after "Let Your Love Flow." Even they were good friends, and because we talked, and Neil, we did a duet together some years later, and we kind of relived the story with him and everything.
So once you heard a demo of "Let Your Love Flow," how quickly did you realize the song could be something special? I mean, did you know right away?
Yeah, it was hit right away. Yeah, this is one of the better songs I've heard.
We went to the producers, and basically, because they weren't as hot on it as we were. They were like, "Yeah, it's a pretty good song," and we were like, "Yeah, we could do that song." This is because Neil's band played on the original demo. So we knew we could get their band to recreate the little fire they got going on in the demo. So
we brought in some of our best stash and condiments to turn the record.
We persuaded them.
So when you heard it, were one of you more sure of the song than the other, or did you both hear it and just go, "We got lightning in a bottle here"?
No, we both
Well,
because we knew what we could sing. We knew it's like casting a part. You can play that part. And so we knew right away we could sing it.
So, dare I say, to me, the song kind of has a then more kind of Coast vibe to it in my mind. Was genre ever a consideration for you guys when making music? Because to me, again, another dare I say, I mean, now you have country crossover artists all over the place, but back then, not so much.
Yeah, genre was never something we thought about too much. Everyone else did. Because everybody else said, "Hey, what did you do? You're on the country charts now. Aren't y'all a pop act?" But genre was really never that important to us. We like what we like. If it's gospel, if it's heavy metal, if it's a great song, it's a great song.
there is an old, my favorite poster we ever done. And it is called Country. It is Country Rocks, the title. And it had Emily LaHurst, it had the Eagles, it had Judge and Browns and Brown. It had ourselves, and it's in our studio. That old photo is a very famous poster. And but it was literally, that was the origin. It's kind of country rock,
The West Coast country rock sound stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you think of country, you don't necessarily think of those bands. I think of them more folk rock, but
Right.
but I mean, I guess you could throw, a number of other. You could throw America in there for that match. You know what I mean? But it's interesting that there was this kind of. It's almost like you guys were crossover before crossover was a thing. But it also seems as if when you're talking about music didn't matter to you and that it mattered to some people, I'm guessing the producers is probably the people who packaged it, are probably the people who wanted to label. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what made it just weird for people is like about a year and a half after Love Flow came out, or maybe 2.5 years. We were in Nashville talking to Conway Twitty about opening his tour for him. Now, and Conway is one of the first people that heard Beautiful Body, because we played it on one of his shows, and everybody gave us a standing ovation after this song. Back then there was no social media, nothing. And Conway comes and goes, "Boy, I think that's a hit. You better cut that song." And but Conway, he just knew what a good song was. He wasn't worried really about.
Well, he came from Sun Records too, and Sun produced a lot of different things.
His first record was a pop record as well, Only Make Believe.